Hello and welcome back, everyone, to Wizard of Legend on Rocket Rabbit Commentaries. And in this episode, we are back after doing a bunch of grinding. Very specifically, we did actually clear a couple more times off screen, so we have access to a bunch more Chaos Arcana. But one of the big things that we're still missing is the very specifically, we are still missing the super gems that I am attempting to farm up for. However, I wanted to show off this run specifically because it is one of my early attempts at Mono Ice. Mono Ice is a strategy that I have to say is not actually all that good, but at the same point, I really do enjoy playing with it. Also, we got the Chaos Reaper as a basic Chaos spell, which is really, really awesome. Frost Feint and...
Frost Dash. Earthen Aegis. A ring of icy blades.
And...
Let
Ice
it
Spear.
snow.
There we go. So... Frost Feint is honestly not all that good of a dash because it just puts on on Ice Clone. But yes, Rule is the usual cloak that I use for my casual runs. The very small damage and defense buffs that it provides are honestly very satisfying to play with. But this is what the normal combo ends up looking like for this specific set of Arcana. We are attempting specifically to run Mono Ice all the way through, and I think what are we looking for? Is it Sundering, or are we going for the? No, we're going for Shiva's water bottle, of course. Yeah.
The Sundering.
So, pretty much every relic has every offensive relic has got an elemental cycle tied to it. Shiva's water bottle is the water version of Ifrit's matchstick, Gaia's shovel, and I think it's Freya's pinwheel. But yes, with the exception of Chaos, every element that we have assigned properties to has a relic that increases its specific damage. There's also a defensive relic for every element, and there is Freya's Hourglass. There is also, I think that there's a cooldown reducer for every element as well, but I'm probably wrong about that.
Cooldown. Frost powers.
No. What I'm thinking is the elemental status bursts that every element gets tied to. There is also a sprite for every elemental status element as well. It's why Frost and Slow are the preferred sprites that I would prefer to have if I had to choose. Because burning is actually a good status ailment, but I don't actually know what the impairment is. I think it's effectively a worse poison, but I don't know.
We are venturing away from the health regen type of powers that helped us win the game earlier.
Yes. Don't be too don't get too comfortable with that, though. A rather funny thing happens in this one anyway.
That we end up changing to the Sanguine costume.
We don't end up
anyway.
changing into it. We end up finding it.
Oh. Well, just because, I mean, it's nice that the game is affording us options. We don't have to take it if we don't want to.
But it's such a good steroid, damn it.
It is. Yeah, case in point, it wins. But do you want to just do that same thing over and over again to win the game? Do we want to see what else works?
And lots of other stuff does.
We want to
work.
see how those things
with
work
them in order to actually make them fully work, but they do actually work.
I mean, I think that this ice character kicks ass.
Well, at the moment, but again, we are really early on. The rotating snowflake Arcana is honestly really good at defending yourself against groups of enemies, and it's also really good at inflicting the freeze status ailment. But To be entirely honest, this run is almost entirely carried by a combination of Riptide and Ice Spear. Ice Spear does a boatload of damage and also can effectively pin enemies. You just say, "I want that enemy the fuck away from me," and it does that very, very well.
Great dodging.
Let's see, what do we got here? Some summoners.
What do the cards tell you today?
Now they tell me that I'm going to push you into a pit.
What an entry animation. It began as a card, but the card was an image. The image came to life, and it exited the card in order to come after me and try killing me.
I will say that the overall damage output of Rotating Snowflake is much lower than I would like it to be, but it is still actually very effective. It's just that, I wish you did more damage. Even under Shiva's water bottle, a majority of ice spells don't actually hit all that hard. And as Annotations Gerdat was mentioning there, Riptide's lengthy animation ends up being a hindrance for a good portion of the run, as opposed to a benefit, simply because you end up. It's not that you don't have the ability to interact while it's on cooldown. It's that the cooldown on it is actually somewhat questionable.
Yes, learn those cooldown timings. And you'll see why some abilities are great and others just plain suck.
Alright, let's get an enhanced Ice Spear. It now flies faster and does slightly more damage.
Boss time. So many hits.
Yes, so many hits. Unfortunately, Frost Feint is actually probably the weakest aspect of this run. Although it has multiple charges on it, the only interesting benefit of having multiple charges is if you specifically manage to trigger its Curse Eater's Mask. Is if you manage to specifically trigger its the decoy effect on it, which is actually very difficult to do while you're actually in combat. The decoy effects on the clone dashes are honestly very powerful if you understand how you're supposed to use them. Unfortunately, I do not. I always end up using my dashes to try and go away from targets, and although I think that's how the decoy effects should actually be the most powerful, it ends up not being that way, because although Frost Feint can inflict freeze, it also effectively doesn't do damage when it does so. More often than not, my ice clones end up getting destroyed by enemy projectile attacks, as opposed to actually interacting with enemies.
Yes, decoys, when used successfully, will find themselves quite vulnerable to destruction. But the decoy caster will be safe with glee while he takes out the enemy.
That is the hope, at least. Oh, look, a bunch of chaos blobs. So what element do you think you would attempt to focus on if you were going to attempt to complete the wizard trials, Mr. Cloud?
I'd probably try fire.
The fire is very high damage in general, so I can respect that. It's not one that I actually
it's
like myself, to be perfectly honest, because aside from exploding fireball, there isn't really any signature fire spells that I like. I mean, Heroic Blaze looks really fucking cool, but doesn't honestly do all that much. That specific effect. The Earthen Warriors have the ability to generate a projectile reflecting shield. So if it's up and you hit them with a pretty heavy projectile, like your goddamn Ice Spear, it ends up going directly back into your face and pinning you into a wall, as well as inflicting you with freeze. So you do still need to, read what your enemies are doing.
Oh,
thankfully, I think that only the Elemental Warrior variants can actually put up those style of shields. And I think it's only Warrior and Wind that actually have the reflectors on them. The Fire one is actually a damage steroid that I have no idea why the fuck they give a damage steroid as a shield. The ice one is actually a full defensive shield in that you have to fight through it in order to actually start damaging the warriors normally. And I don't remember what the lightning one does.
I do like that trade-off that you can have a shield that is supposed to have the function of a shield, but instead of being a shield, it improves your attack power.
That's
a clear indication the game
that you think is usually really interesting to consider, but on an enemy, it ends up being a hey, this is the thing that you need to know can happen, or else it's going to get you killed. I mean, it's one of the big problems that some players have with Yasmat for Final Fantasy XII, because if you don't know it's going to hit your party reflect halfway through the fight, you can end up spending 4 hours failing to do any damage to it. We're never doing Final Fantasy XII.
I saw that.
I refuse.
Well, we might have to settle for some more Chocobo.
But I'm not familiar with the PlayStation 1 Mysterious Dungeon game. Yes, as Annotations Gerdat mentions here, the majority of the clones in the game, the clone dashes in the game, don't actually come with taunt. There are a couple that do, but I don't remember which ones they are. I think that there's specifically a fire one that comes with taunt, but I can't recall what it is. Yes, we still gotta go further up north in order to finish up the rest of this map.
You know, some people tell me I can be like a loser at times, but then I make a decoy and people say, hey, that's a cool dude.
Aha, aha, aha.
The Ice Mage is always the most popular.
I mean, if we go by the logic that Red Mage says during Ape Theater, sure, but he is also the least popular at every party he has ever attended, including his own party somehow.
Because people will try talking to him, but he'll just kind of stare blankly at you like a real stiff.
So, any of these that we actually want? It doesn't look like it. I don't. There are only a couple of cursed relics that I actually usually go for. Like there is the sanguine hat that I like, but the only other one that I usually end up liking is the double damage one, which doubles the damage that both of you are dealing and that you are taking. So.
I would imagine the double-edged sword technique will yield many victories.
Not many. I think I've only actually won with double damage like twice, but it was satisfying both times I ran it. So
nice.
Claws of Tomo. Are we gonna? Yep, we are going for Claws of Tomo.
Get the shoes. Soccer cleats.
But our Frostbite already doesn't do damage, Mr. Cloud. It just inflicts the freeze status ailment.
Remember, all of your accessories and all of your abilities should mesh, for abilities in conflict with each other will surely cause you to be at a disadvantage.
Yes. Yay! We bested the Crash Knight. Alright, in the next episode, we will continue on with our Mono Ice Run.
The Pandemic Pouch.
Alright, be safe, everyone. I'll explain what Pandemic Pouch does when we return.